Observers on both sides struggled to get an overview of the maelstrom on the cliffs and in the gorges. It was no longer even a question of small unit combat, but rather of one man against another in a terrain in which one could spend hours on end without having any clear idea of what was happening, only 10 yards from the forward positions. Read a report from the Moroccan division. The battle continued after dawn, and in the following days, the North Africans fought hard to move forward. Finally, on the 5th day, all the designated targets had been captured, and the weary soldiers got a well-deserved rest. Despite their efforts, the offensive had only advanced the front by 5 kilometers, and the Allies had only managed to reach the German defensive position, the Gustav Line. The slow progress was nothing new in the protracted Italian campaign. Ever since September 1943, when troops from the United States, British Empire, and French colonies had landed in southern Italy, the Allies had been slowly moving north. The Germans had blown up all the bridges over gorges in the mountains, and destroyed the crossings over the gushing rivers of the lowlands. The narrow roads were blocked by mines, and from the ridges hidden guns, mortars, and machine guns caused constant losses. Field Marshal Albert Kesselring had promised Hitler that he could defend Rome until the summer of 1944, so Kesselring prepared the Gustav Line, a belt of positions from coast to coast, to force the enemy's offensive to grind to a halt. The location of the Gustav Line had been chosen with care, because almost the entire width of Italy was covered in mountains at that point. By the Adriatic Sea to the east, there was only a narrow strip of coastal plain, and to the west, the Abruzzi Mountains rose from the sea. Between them and the mighty Apennines lay the Liri Valley, the only place where Allied tanks could advance. First, however, they had to cross the Rapido River, and every meter of it was watched from the peaks behind the city of Cassino. From here, the Germans could also direct deadly gunfire at the only usable road to the north. Supreme Allied Commander Harold Alexander was aware that the road which leads to Rome is long and bristles with thorns, as he wrote. So instead of breaking through the Gustav Line, Alexander laid out an ambitious plan that would make an attack on the Germans' natural fortress unnecessary. By landing on the coast behind the enemy, he'd give the Germans on the Gustav Line a choice between being surrounded and wiped out or surrendering. On Saturday, 22nd of January 1944, the plan was set in motion as boats full of American and British soldiers streamed in towards the coast at Anzio, between the front and Rome. But Kesselring's reserve units were prepared, and German elite forces quickly surrounded the bridgehead. The Allies took too long to break out, and the Anzio operation was a failure. Americans attacked in vain. In parallel with the landing, attacks began at the mouth of the Liri Valley to keep the German forces at the front. The offensive would soon escalate into a real attempt to break through Kesselring's line. Meanwhile, the North Africans of the Free French forces were again advancing towards the Nazis. But the attack had barely begun when an order to change direction arrived. The colonial troops had to turn southwest to help the Americans, who were trying to capture the city and mountain of Cassino. The hardy North African soldiers weren't impressed with their allies, and they quickly discovered that the enemy's respect for the American soldiers was just as low. German patrols were operating all over no man's land, throwing grenades and shouting insults at us, wrote Sergeant Ahmed Ben Bella, who later became the first president of independent Algeria. We soon realized, as the insults were all in English, that the Germans thought the Americans were still there. The Americans had hardly sent out any patrols, and had not even been able to tell us where the enemy outposts were located. At the northern edge of Cassino, an American division was trying to cross the Rapido River, but each attack was slowed down by mines and muddy riverbanks, while German machine guns kept battering away. Sergeant Major Billy Kirby described the horror. We were under constant fire. It was the only scene that I'd seen in the war that lived up to what you see in the movies.